Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Collective podcast, where we tell it like it is, and it is like we tell it. I'm your host, as always, Alan, aka the Ace Man Dickie, and I'm really excited about this week's episode. You know, as we move along in this journey as entrepreneurs, there's a lot of different areas for us to cover, but one of them that really needs to be spoken of early on as we go through this journey is, the title of this episode, the first and the biggest obstacle. Now, what am I talking about here? You know, everybody, I'm convinced, at one point or another has thought, you know what, I want to do it on my own. I want to have my own business, right? Everybody works at these jobs, then we discussed what they are in the previous episode, but everybody has these jobs, careers, etc. And many times during them, you know, you have these moments, why are we doing it this way? This doesn't make sense. It would be better that way. If I was in charge, we'd do it different. And so I want to point this out that I think it's natural that all of us want to have these businesses or be in these positions of control where we can sink or swim based on what we feel is best. And that in itself is one of the most amazing things about becoming an entrepreneur. However, when you are starting to contemplate this possibility, right, before the dream gets shattered, it's important to proactively identify who your greatest adversary is, right? Your first and your biggest obstacle. And much to many of your surprise, or much to all of your surprise, I would suggest, that biggest obstacle is not some boogeyman. It's not some big monster that's, you know, hiding under your bed, waiting for you to take the plunge so it can jump out and scare the life out of you. No. It's actually probably that who you would least expect. You know, as you see, your first and biggest obstacle on this road to becoming an entrepreneur is going to be those ones closest to you, the ones who love you the most. Yes, I will say it again. Your first and greatest obstacle is going to be the ones that love you the most and those that are closest to you. I want to share my personal experience to give you an idea of what it is I'm talking about. I'm going to go way back, okay? I'm talking, 20 years ago. I'm selling cars, you know, I'm in a dealership feeling like a professional, loving life, have my own business cards, wearing suits every day. I'm making a far greater money than any of my peers are. One of the amazing things about relying on yourself for your own production, commission in sales. And I remember this would have been back in 2004, I'm going to guess. I remember because poker was a big thing at the time. Poker was huge, and every waking second you had, it seemed as though you and your buddies, at least in my circles anyway, were saying, hey, when's the next poker game? Let's play some Texas Hold'em. Well, I remember at my condo, right? I would hold poker games, like literally every weekend, it seemed. In fact, I can recall I had a kitchen table that was a glass top table, a beautiful table, but I never saw how beautiful that table was for a good 3 years because there was a poker tabletop permanently stuck to it. And why was it stuck there? Because if any of you have had these poker nights, many a times your buddies are knocking over drinks and things that leak through the table and end up becoming the greatest adhesive. It wasn't until I moved out of that condo I needed a couple people to help me rip the thing off. But let's get back to the point. I remember in between these poker games, I used to smoke. Terrible habit. Don't do it anymore. To all of you who still do and perhaps are looking to quit, keep up the good fight. Keep fighting the good fight. But we would have a smoke break on the balcony. And I remember on these moments, you know, usually everybody would have a few cocktails in them at that time and feeling pretty good, you know, and we'd be talking. And I remember sitting there saying to my buddies, you know what? I've got an idea of, a business that I'm going to run. And I would literally be talking about my business that I started almost 15 years ago. And I'll never forget, as I was explaining to them with all kinds of attitude, conviction, and energy, you know, all types of passion, as I was explaining to them what I was going to do, they found it humorous. You would have thought that I was telling them a joke. I know many of you out there who are currently successful entrepreneurs are nodding your head relating to this right now. And to those of you that are just embarking on the journey, listen to what I'm telling you because you're about to personally experience it. But they thought it was funny. They thought it was a joke, these ideas I had. And what I mean by this is the giggle that they would have, it had this arrogance behind it of, you know, look at this guy actually thinking this would work, right? It was like I was humoring them, you know? And yet at the time, to me, I was dead serious. I'm like, I know how to do math. 1 + 1 is 2. I've got a game plan here. This all makes sense. I understand when value exceeds price, business gets done. And the value proposition I had put together in my head, I knew was extremely valuable to the marketplace. I mean, that's why it gave me so much confidence to go after it. However, these are my best friends at the time. And they're the ones who just didn't see it, no matter how much sense it made. They still wanted to say, okay, can we get back to the game? This guy right here. You understand what I mean? Now, what I want to point out to you here is there was a number of years that I thought about building out my business, and there was a number of years where, as I would get closer to thinking about, hey, it's time to do this, these types of conversations would just knock me offline a little bit. And, I would fall back into my role in the dealership. I mean, it was making incredible money at the time. Incredible to me, when you're a young person in your early 20s and you're making a 6-figure income, you feel like you're quite the shooter, right? You're going out eating steaks and lobster every night with your girlfriends at the time. And did I just pluralize that? Girlfriend at the time. And, you're living a life that really can become a trap. It can become a life that makes you quite comfortable, right? Think about it. I'm sitting in a condo. I'm an avid golfer. I was golfing at will whenever I had the time off, eating out at nice restaurants all the time, never really thinking about money because I had it. However, I hadn't anticipated a future of mine where I would perhaps have a family, where I would need multiple bedrooms for children I'd like to have. Those children might need a backyard to run around and play, and they might end up going to some, university that would cost me an arm and a leg. I hadn't thought about all of that. And I know many of you who are embarking on this journey now or who have already embarked on it, these were a lot of the motivating factors because that job or that career you had, just wasn't cutting it. And so on top of the fact that you had better ideas, on top of the fact that you knew you had a certain value that you wanted to bring to the marketplace, right? All of that in addition to, the need to produce more money than you were currently receiving is what really sort of pushes you along and leads you along this journey. It's funny, as this is happening in my career, right? I remember the last position I held, right? As I was moving forward towards becoming an entrepreneur, the last position I held, I was at a dealership and I was working in the used car department. Now, a friend of mine was the used car manager at the time. And the reason I went to work there is because I had this business was really starting to overwhelm me. It was all I could think about. And as it was overwhelming me, my passion and desire for my sales career in the automotive industry, it was really starting to decline. And so there was an opportunity where I could go work with this friend of mine and still be able to produce enough revenue to take care of business, right? I had a home at this time. My bills were more expensive. And I'll never forget my wife, my gorgeous wife, was pregnant, newly pregnant with my first child. And so I knew I needed to be producing money. And a lot of you feel that pressure, which is why perhaps you haven't let go yet. And we're going to get into how to handle that. But feeling this pressure, I had an opportunity at this dealership where I was able to sell ups to anybody who came in looking for a pre-owned vehicle. I was also a subprime business manager, meaning any customers who had credit concerns, I was the sole entity at the store who would take care of those people. I had advertising budgets for local newspapers that drove me leads for those opportunities. And on top of all of that, I assisted in the maintenance of the used car department, which gave me a percentage of its profitability on a monthly basis. So it was an opportunity where I could make, $150,000 a year, pay my bills, and still bring along this dream. Well, this is where the story gets interesting. I'll never forget, it seemed as though every shift there would be an up or an opportunity come through the door, and I would say to my buddies, yeah, you go ahead and take it. I'm working on this deal. I wasn't working on a deal. I was building out this game plan because I was getting ready to jump. And one day, the friend of mine who was operating the used car building, he came over to my office, and we had always chatted. He knew where my head was at. And he looked at me and he said, come on, let me give you a ride home. Now, for those of you that are not in the automotive industry, let me explain to you what he was saying. Basically, he was saying that this isn't working out. He knew that my head was in another place, and he knew that it was time for me to move on. He was basically letting me go. This was the one and only time I can say I suppose, got let go. And when he said, come on, let me give you a drive home, what he was referring to is we should wrap this up. And I was driving a company vehicle and they were going to need that company vehicle back. So he wanted me to leave the company vehicle there, pack up my stuff, and he was going to give me a drive home. Now, when this happened, I wasn't surprised. Dare I say, and a lot of you current entrepreneurs will relate to this, dare I say I was happy about it. Maybe he was making a decision that was some time overdue. And the fact that it was being made, I was embracing it because I really was at the point where it was time to jump, right? Fast forward, he drives me home. I'll never forget, my wife is 3 months pregnant at this time. And her mother-in-law was over at our home, and my wife was at work at the time. And I'll never forget pulling up, and she too smoked at the time, and she was outside. I'll never forget, outside on the balcony of my house. She was having a cigarette. There was a light rain. It was overcast, a light rain. And I remember this buddy of mine, he dropped me off, and again, we had a great chat on the way home. I said to you, hey, we'll talk to you soon. And I went out, and I lit a cigarette. And it was on the porch right then and there. I'll never forget saying to myself as I was chit-chatting with her, it starts now. It starts right now. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I said to myself, it starts right now, you know what I was saying? What I was saying is, I don't have another choice. I've got a child that's on the way, and I'm either going to make this thing pop and I'm going to bring it to fruition, or we've got an even greater problem on our hands, because I'll tell you something, folks, I wasn't even considering a plan B. Why? Well, because a wise person once told me, anybody who has a plan B is not committed to plan A. You understand? Now, let me follow that line of thinking for a moment, because again, what are we talking about here? We're talking about preparing you, because your greatest adversary is going to be the ones you love. I just gave you the story of how my best friends, my buddies, were the ones who were having a giggle and laughing at what it is I was going to accomplish. Well, it gets even crazier than that. I remember when I got home that day, or maybe it was the day after, I had a conversation with my parents. Yeah, I was talking to mom and dad. Now, who loves you more than mom and dad, right? Nobody. And I remember when I was having a conversation with them, I said to them, hey, mom, dad, this is what I'm doing. I'm bringing this business along. This is what I'm going to do. I've had it in my heart and I'm going for it now. Well, the very first thing out of their mouths, okay, is they said, oh my God, son, don't do that. Bring it along on the side. You've got a mortgage. You've got a child on the way. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, it's out of love. They were giving me what they felt was great advice. They were warning me, right? But it was in that moment I reminded them what I just reminded you. I said, hey, mom, dad, anybody who's got a plan B is not committed to plan A. I was so certain in what I was doing. I remember looking them in the eye and saying, this is what it is I'm doing, and this is what the business is going to look like, and I know it's going to win. Right? I know it's going to win. But they were so concerned with protecting me, and so is your environment. They started to tell me, hey, bring things along on the side. Well, I just told you, this is not how this game works. And the other thing is, you need to understand that it's the ones who love you the most that are going to give you this fear-mongering. And I really want to tell you, folks, it's not intentional. You see, here's the principle. Comfort is next to apathy, and apathy next to death. Right? What they were trying to create, what any parent is trying to create, is this comfort for their child. Yet what we all must remind ourselves is a principle I love to remind people of, is the greatest sign of love a mother eagle ever shows its baby is the day she kicks it out of the nest. You see, if the mother never kicked the baby out of the nest, inevitably what would happen is that bird would grow so big, so fat, it would collapse the nest and fall to its imminent death, splat on the ground. These eagles, they put their nests 3,000 feet up in the air, right? They're on the edge of cliffs to protect themselves from predators. And the process here is when the time is right, mom kicks that bird from the nest and watches it free fall as it starts to wonder to itself, what's going on here? Now, before it splats to the ground, the mother bird will sail down, catch the bird, and bring it back up to the nest. You see, at this point, the mother bird has also removed all the comfortable leaves and what have you in the nest, so it's nothing but thorns. You ever see a baby's foot? To all you ladies out there, you ever see new mums? Oh my God, these feet, they're so soft. They're so, right? Well, that's what a baby's eagle's feet are going to be like too. Imagine as they start to step on these thorns, they automatically jump out of the nest themselves. This process repeats itself until that bird ultimately starts flapping those wings, learns how to fly. And by mom taking this courageous action, what has occurred? Well, this child, or this baby eagle, is now in a position to fulfill its purpose, to be the monster of all birds soaring amongst the clouds in the sky. It's on the dollar bill, for crying out loud. So there's a principle to be learned from there. And this is one of the things that I think it's important for a lot of up-and-coming budding entrepreneurs to understand, right? You are going to have the ones that love you the most, the ones that care for you the most, trying to do good by you, giving you really poor advice, right? I want you to make a note and remind yourself of something. This is for all human beings. You only know what you know, and conversely, you don't know what you don't know. So if you have a parent, a family member, or a loved one who is telling you, oh, don't do this, it may not work. What if it does? But if you have them saying these things, it's important to vet your source. If my parents were both successful entrepreneurs and they were giving me this advice, I would have poured a coffee, sit down, and had a deeper conversation. But they were not. Neither were any of my friends. There's a lot of opportunity to learn in situations like these. I always say to people, I've got that ace, that attitude, conviction, and energy. And I always say to people, if you ever want to know how awesome I think I am, just ask me and I will tell you. Don't miss this, folks. Ignorance, a lack of knowledge, sees confidence, that's me right here, and identifies it as arrogance. There's nothing arrogant about me, folks, just a level of certainty perhaps many human beings on planet Earth have never experienced before. Now, why would I say something like that? If you want to know how awesome I think I am, just ask me and I'll tell you. Why would I say that? Well, it's for this very reason I'm discussing on this podcast, because those closest to you are the ones who are going to deter you. They're the ones who are going to think they're doing right by you with all of this nonsense and fear-mongering based on no personal experience, and that potentially could knock you off your course and rob you of this destiny you have. And it's been burning inside you. That's why you're watching this right now. So when I talk like that, I remind people, if your closest family members and loved ones are not going to talk to you like that, then who is? And it's important that you do, because you're the only one who is going to believe in the vision that you have. Remember, folks, sight is the greatest enemy of vision. Even you will question your vision at times, but I want to encourage you that reoccurring thought, that reoccurring business, that reoccurring next move, it keeps reoccurring for a reason. Now, I want to bring up another wonderful piece of advice or example. Again, we're talking about overcoming the greatest obstacle in your entrepreneurial journey, and it's the one that usually kills the dreams of many who were destined to be entrepreneurs but got scared off of it. You see, I love the Bible. I think the Bible is loaded with so much incredible wisdom. It's just unreal. But one of the things that Jesus said in the Bible is he said a prophet is never respected in his own home. You see, in the book, he had performed many miracles all around the place, and word of these miracles had gone all across the land. Yet, when he came back to Nazareth, all of the people looked at him and said, "What's the big deal? Isn't that Joseph, the carpenter's son?" You see, it was their lack of faith and belief that caused him to perform no miracles in that moment. Now, settle down. Nobody is suggesting they're a prophet here. However, let me bring this into the world's terms. Many will say if you want to become an expert, you need to move over 2 states. It's because the ones that are surrounded by you, they will always look at you as that friend they played baseball with. They'll look at you as that high school buddy. They'll look at you as that nephew, that son, that neighbor. You understand? I remember when I was starting my business and coming out, I had a lot of this energy. Luckily for me, perhaps ignorance is bliss. As stated, I think I'm awesome. And if you want to know how awesome, just ask and I'll tell you. So it didn't deter me, but I also know there are a lot of human beings out there on planet Earth that don't possess that same conviction in their visions and in themselves. That's why mentors like me exist, so that I can show you, not just through my opinion, but through laws, through fact, through principle, on how I'm able to point this out and guarantee it for you. The important thing is, when I got going in my business, I was willing to grind through that noise, and I was very successful locally. But I'll tell you something, folks, the game completely changed when I utilized this wonderful tool called the internet, and I was able to expose my thoughts, ideas, and concepts to a broader market, to the world, to somebody 2 states over. At that point, you start to realize other principles show up. The ones like, when you become valuable to the world will pay you to be yourself. The world has paid me to be myself for the last 15 years. Thank you, world. And it is no different for you. So right now, how do you apply this? Well, it's really simple. You know, I say faith steps on seeming void and finds the rock beneath. This is about trust. Now, when you're watching this, you might look and say, well, you know, you just told me I can't trust the people. They only know what they know. They don't know what they don't know. That's why you're here listening to me. Because I've walked that walk, talked that talk, and continue to prosper and thrive to this very day. And when you go onto the internet, you can type my name in the Google bar, and evidence of this journey for the past 10, 15 years is all right there in front of your face. So faith is not required, not a huge level of it. I'm giving you the proof. What I'm trying to show you here is the fact that it's natural. And it's really quite normal that when you're ready to start this amazing journey, you need to anticipate that the first and the biggest obstacles that you are going to run into are going to be those ones closest to you that love you the most. Some of you have a partner, a spouse, a husband, or a wife right now who is saying, I don't know about that, honey, right? I'll never forget, I had a friend of mine, he's still a friend of mine. And a few years into my business, he saw what I was doing, and he was really attracted to it. He saw I was doing what I want, when I want, how I want, with whom I want, whenever I want. And he wanted a piece of it. I said to him, I know you're an amazing salesperson. Why don't you come and work along with me? There's incredible opportunity out here, and I'm just one person. I can't reach everyone. He agreed, and he came aboard. You know what the challenge was? He was a little bit further ahead of me in life at that point. You see, he got into the housing market at a younger age, had already flipped a home and was making a lot of money on that home. And he had already flipped into an even bigger home, an amazing home, $1 million home. And at the time, that was a crazy home, still is. It would just cost you $2 million today. But I'll never forget, he was still working his current job, and then he would put in time and energy with me on the side. And it didn't take long until I realized this is never going to work. It wasn't going to work for a number of reasons. I knew, number one, that you got to burn your ships, right? If you're going to do something, you can't have a plan B. You can't have a fallback, right? Here's the principle, folks. Necessity is the mother of all invention. When you have to figure it out, you figure it out. But the second you have a fallback, you get lazy, you give up, and what do? You fall back. Well, this fella already had more than half of this $1 million home paid for. He had a spouse that wasn't trying to hear about some adventure in the playground of starting your own business or working alongside me where he could make 4 times the money and have 80% of his life back. She wasn't trying to hear that. That required too much faith from her. And maybe some of you have spouses, husbands or wives, who give you the same speech, right? Maybe for myself, it was a blessing that when I started my business, what little I had, I was ready to burn. I did not care. I'd walk away from it because I'd rather be 6 feet in the ground than not do what was gnawing at me every single day to do. AlanDickie.com. But this particular individual, because of that fallback and because of that additional pressure where, his direct spouse didn't share in that same vision, it naturally led to the inevitable demise of the opportunity. And he went back to that position where, to my knowledge, he's been since. Now, I'm not knocking that, but those of you watching this right now are not of that ilk. We are the ones who are willing to take on extraordinary pressures in the name of an extraordinary result. That's exactly what entrepreneurs are and do. However, it's important that you understand this. Even myself, if I was going to tell you my wife saw all of it and was 100% behind me, I'd be lying. I'll never forget in the beginning, yes, that's all she had said. I got your back. You can do it. That felt great for the first 3 weeks until the nervousness started to show up. Hey, the bills are coming. Have you sold anything? How's this going to work, right? So a lot of these people in your life, your loved ones, your spouses, your parents, your best friends, they're the ones who are going to be dumping on you. Oh my God, bring it along on the side. You've got bills, you've got responsibilities. You're going to spontaneously combust and die if you do this. I want you to remind yourself of the principles I've shared. And I also want you to really remind yourself, people only know what they know and they don't know what they don't know. And if these individuals have never done what it is you're looking to accomplish, their opinions don't hold much weight, in my opinion. It's also important to identify where those opinions are coming from. They're coming from the heart, right? But the heart, when it comes to these types of moves in your life, is dangerous. Why? Because the heart is filled with love, and love loves comfort. And I just told you, folks, comfort's next to apathy, and apathy next to death. So let's talk about a couple other things. When you do step out, right? I know it's going to be scary, right? And why is it scary? Well, because ignorance breeds anxiety. When you don't know exactly how to take the next step, when you don't know exactly when that revenue is coming in, it can fill you up with a bit of anxiousness. And this is why you need to fully understand the laws that we teach inside the Entrepreneurial Collective, because they do provide certainty for you. But let's discuss one. Necessity is the mother of all invention. I'll say it to you again. Necessity is the mother of all invention. Now, let me dial this in for you a bit. Maybe you have a spouse, a wife, a husband, right? A partner at home that's like I just described. You know, somebody who would never be willing to hear, hey, give me a year, honey. I'm going to make this business work and then I'll retire us 20 years sooner. You know, they're not trying to hear that or see that. Well, what you need to understand is this. Those very people, let me use my wife for an example. As much as she has come along this journey and become one of us as well. But I remember back in the day saying to her, honey, necessity is the mother of all invention. The number one priority in your life right now, I know, is not even me, it's our children, and I'm cool with that. Let's keep it that way. But what I'm saying here is I said to her, if there was a famine in the land and there was no grocery store, there was nowhere you could eat, I said to her, you would learn how to hunt squirrels with your bare hands and cook them with lighters in the name of feeding your kids. And this is the biggest problem we have in life, is human beings are living these lives so filled with comfort that they never get to test themselves to prove to themselves that they are capable. Confidence is arrived at through accomplishment. Well, if the biggest thing you ever accomplish is showing up to your job on time, right? And going to the bank to withdraw the sack of peanuts they give you Thursday at midnight, well, then you're only going to have that level of confidence. But if you recall the first episode of the podcast where I briefly was explaining to you my journey on how the first time I was on a plane in my life, I was in a third world country, Trinidad and Tobago at the time. This is 20-something years ago. And I was stranded there. Necessity became the mother of all invention. It was only through that must do, that, I have to figure this out, that I was pushed to go for failure and try anything I could to solve this problem. What was the result? Well, I told you. I talked a complete stranger into buying me a plane ticket home on his wife's credit card, on my word that I would pay him when we landed. Do you know how funny it was to be on an airplane with this guy and he was sitting many rows ahead of me and kept doing this? I'd be like, where am I going? Like, are you looking to see if I disappear? Do you think I'm going to jump out the plane? This is what I'm talking about. So for all of you that are embarking on this journey, right? Again, inside the inner circle, we in detail explain all of these things, so you do not need to lose a wink of sleep. But I do want to give value to you here and remind you that necessity is the mother of all invention. Think about going to the gym, right? Everybody wants abs, right? Everybody wants to look like they got the beach body ready for the summer, right? Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Is it rocket science to get in shape? Is that really something that's that difficult? No, it's not. You need to show up to the gym. You need to do the exercises every 4 to 6 weeks. Pardon me. You need to change up the exercises. You need to keep changing up the routine on your body so muscle continues to grow. I mean, you can read this all in the book. You can Google it and have it in 5 seconds. That is not the problem. It is not a lack of information. It's a lack of will. It's a lack of will and the fact that the majority of human beings on planet Earth are soft like porridge and are afraid to do anything. And as I've said, misery loves company. That's why there's so many of them trying to tell you it's okay, you tried, it's okay. No, it's not okay. There's do and do not, there is no try. Who are you hanging around? So when you are embarking on this journey, I want to remind you, okay, never forget it. Your first and your biggest obstacle that you're going to encounter are going to be the ones closest to you and the ones you love the most. It will be those people that will be telling you, hey man, be careful, that won't work. What are you doing? You've got all kinds of bills. You got children, you got family on the side. What are you doing? What are you doing? Whoa, 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 whoa. They will fearmonger you. Don't get too upset. This comes from a good place. They love and care about you. But again, they don't know what it is you're about to do. And they're not committed to doing what you're committed to doing, which is why you're here and they're there saying TGIF. Remember, folks, if it doesn't kill you, it only makes you stronger. And as I wrap up this point, I want you to think to yourselves, excuse me, I want you to think to yourselves, who knew? I've read that Beyonce didn't think she was a good enough singer and had to be dragged into a studio just to sing once for somebody, at which point their jaws dropped and said, sign her immediately. How many of you are lacking this confidence? The only reason you're lacking this confidence is because you currently are existing in a state of ignorance, meaning you just simply don't know and understand the laws and the principles that will guarantee outcomes and really show you how easy this journey can be. But when you're talking about the obstacles and you're talking about those of us that win in life, I mean, check me out, folks. You might start calling me Gandalf the White in a moment. Yeah, a few gray hairs here. Love everyone. They're a badge. But I've earned them. Because again, if it doesn't kill you, it only makes you stronger. I want you to consider this. The Ultimate Fighting Championship. For those of you that are a fan, and if not, I'm sure you get the idea. We're talking about cage fighting here. Well, you know the champions? You know the guys and the girls who've got the belt around their waist? Consider this. Which one of these champions with a belt around their waist does not possess one single scar on their face? I'll look for your answer in the comments. Because the fact of the matter is, all of them got knocked out. All of them had to get clipped by the punch they didn't see coming so that they could continue to grow, learn, and develop. So the next time that punch came, they would know how to duck out of the way and counter. That's why they have the belt today. You see, succeeding as an entrepreneur is about a willingness to go for failure. It's about understanding that there is no such thing as a mistake. There is no mistakes. There's only lessons. The key is they only happen once. Along your journey, as you have these mistakes, these slips, that's okay. That's an okay thing. It's a good thing, provided you take it as a lesson, learn from it, and only allow it to happen once. So folks, I want to remind you, take notes on these episodes. There's going to be a time in your future where you're going to be reciting a lot of this information to other budding entrepreneurs that you come in contact with that will be looking up to you to say, how did you do it? And you're going to have to remind them, as I'm reminding you right now, that your greatest obstacle when you get this journey started, well, it's going to be the ones closest to you, the ones who love you the most. It's going to be mom, dad, your best friend, and even your partner, your spouse. But never forget, there's not one UFC champion out in the game that ever possessed that belt and didn't have a scar on their face, because these are all human beings who achieve greatness, and they do so through a willingness to learn, understanding that the learning is not always going to be that comfortable, right? But in the end, it's going to be worth it. Because folks, I remember when I told people what I was doing, When I started my journey, they would say things to me like, "What are you doing now, man?" Because they didn't see me in a dealership. And I would say to them, "I've started my own company, AlanDickie.com." They would look at me puzzled and they would say, "What's that?" And I would say, "You don't know, you better ask somebody, you better find out." I knew exactly where it was I was headed, even while they didn't have a clue and looked bewildered at me when I made that statement. But can I tell you something that happened to me, and it is guaranteed going to happen to you as well? The day in the very near future is going to come where they will see you, wrap their arms around you as they say, "Let me get a picture. I always knew you'd make it." And you're going to respond like me, "Bullshit, you did." But you're not going to say it. Just smile for the picture and be happy, thankful, and feel blessed that you had the courage to take the step to be on the journey and start to experience the exact life that you want and deserve to live. Folks, that's us for this episode. Again, we're talking about the first and biggest obstacles you're going to encounter to yourself and to other budding entrepreneurs who need to hear this message. Be sure to share the message. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because we've got a ton of content coming down the pipe that is going to be a blessing to you along your journey. Because again, we are all here to serve the world through our businesses, and let's do this and win together. This has been the Entrepreneurial Collective Podcast. I'm Alan Dickie, and I'll look forward to seeing you on our next episode.